Okay, in this video I'm going over UFC Fight Night, Johnny Walker versus Zhang Mingyang. I'm just going over the main card. Overall, the card was really good. I thought the prelims were very exciting. There was a ton of finishes and a ton of scraps. Whenever there wasn't a finish, it was always at least somewhat entertaining with a fifth round that always ended up being a crazy fucking brawl for the last couple of minutes. So, we're going to start with Tai Lake Noerji versus Kiefer Crosby. So, Noerji dominated this fight from start to finish easily. Kiefer Crosby starts the fight with going for a takedown, doesn't get it. Noerji switches positions, ends up in guard, starts raining down ground and pound like a motherfucker, completely dominating the fight. And then Kiefer Crosby gets some space, gets to one knee, and Noerji obliterates him with an illegal knee to the face, which cuts open his cheek. And I'm thinking, fuck, it's all done. It's a disqualification. Kiefer Crosby wins. That sucks. But Kiefer Crosby decides he's still good to go, that he still wants to fight, and Mark Goddard takes 2 points, which I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. That is a fight altering event, and it's going to probably result in a finish anyway. And it pretty much did. Noerji instantly gets back on the pressure, gets him down, just landing ground and pound elbows up against the fence, and finishes Kiefer Crosby in the first round easily. Kiefer Crosby just isn't very good. Noerji looked dangerous. He wanted to harm his opponent on the ground. He didn't want to control him. He wanted to damage him, and it paid off. And he illegally struck him, which also paid off. So maybe that's a new strategy in MMA. Maybe illegally strike if you know that your opponent's gonna have a big heart or that's gonna want to continue. Illegal strikes to get a finish might become a new strategy going forward, which I wouldn't mind, I guess, because it was kind of entertaining. But pick Noerji to win. It was the obvious pick. Kiefer Crosby's really ass, and they should probably cut Crosby at this point. But I want to see what this Noerji guy has to do going forward. But I don't think he didn't really show anything in this fight that it's super cool or anything. But he has a lot of finishes on his record, and I'm excited to see what he does. So next, Sumudwerji versus Kevin Borjas. I went with Sumudwerji. I thought he was going to be able to outstrike Kevin Borjas on the back foot, and that's exactly what he did. Sumudwerji outstruck Kevin Borjas all 3 rounds. He pieced apart Kevin Borjas easily on the feet, was way too quick, way too slick on the back foot. Kevin Borjas was trying to pressure. He could not land, and Sumudwerji was pacing him up with counters, with anything he really wanted. He was throwing a bunch of crazy shit once he got comfortable. He was throwing spinning back kicks, spinning wheel kicks, spinning back fists. He was going crazy, and he was landing. And Kevin Borjas just wasn't. He wasn't landing as much, nearly as Sumudwerji was. All 3 rounds, Sumudwerji was just doing better in the output. And whenever Kevin Borjas would come in, he'd get countered hard. Sumudwerji just looked really clean and really slick in the striking. There wasn't grappling from Kevin Borjas, and he probably should have went for it because he was getting completely dominated in the striking the entirety of the fight. Kevin Borjas had like a couple moments when he would come in and throw, and he'd land a couple shots or land a jab. The thing about Chinese fighters is they don't have great head movement, is what I've realized, but they're always really fun and slick on the feet. Or at least Sumudwerji definitely was. Sumudwerji pretty much just dominated Kevin Borjas on the feet for all 3 rounds. Made it pretty fun. Was trying to be stylish. It worked to a degree. Couldn't finish him, but he landed spinning wheel kicks at the end of certain rounds and stuff, and wanted to throw down like Max Holloway in the 5th round, I'm pretty sure too. There was a lot of pointing down in this whole card, which they never really threw after they pointed down. So it was nothing like Max Holloway does, which they got to stop doing that. They got to stop pointing to the ground and then not doing anything at all, or hesitating on a jab, or shooting a takedown, because that happens quite a bit and it's really irritating. But Sumudwerji gets it done pretty easily against Kevin Borjas. Doesn't take much damage whatsoever, and was just way too slick. So yeah, Sumudwerji wins. Next, we have Sergey Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. So Acosta did a lot better than I thought. I picked Pavlovich. Acosta did pretty good. He was able to utilize his jab well. He was jabbing Sergey Pavlovich for the entirety of the fight. But the main thing to happen, the main like key element of this fight was Sergey Pavlovich winning every single exchange with power when they would clash. There was a bunch of outside foot, like trying to get foot position on each other, trying to keep range and feint at each other and try to make the other person jump or throw like a retard like Waldo was a lot. And every single time there was a lot of feinting and Sergey would try to feint. Waldo Cortez would lunge in like a retard and throw some bullshit that was super telegraphed and Sergey Pavlovich would catch him and they would exchange like big like a polar bear versus a black bear. They would just like throw like freaks for like 5 seconds and then stop and then waddle around, try to find range, try to feint. And in those exchanges, Sergey Pavlovich was able to get the upper hand in many of them, a lot more than Costa. Overall, Sergey just landed a lot more power shots. Waldo had a good jab, like I said. He was landing it. He has technical striking, and he's pretty athletic, but he just can't. Every single time he tries to throw anything with power, he telegraphs like a motherfucker and throws his leg back and like does like a lunge and then throws. Like he's just, it's not, you're not going to get caught if you're Sergey Pavlovich who's actually good at fighting. And he didn't. And he tried to counter well and he countered effectively. There wasn't much grappling. There was some up against the cage action from Sergey Pavlovich, but other than that, it was just 3 rounds. I thought Sergey won all 3. I don't really understand Cortez getting one of the rounds on 2 judges' scorecards. I guess he could have. There maybe is an argument for Cortez in a round. I didn't think so. I thought Sergey won all 3. I thought he was just doing a bit more. I will say that the commentary was glazing the fuck out of Sergey the whole time and saying that every single thing that Sergey did, even if it whiffed, was landing. Like Sergey went for like a lot of exchange, like a lot of punches in these like crazy situations that did not land whatsoever. And Bisping is up there saying that Sergey's landing everything all the time. The commentary the whole night was kind of weird and cringe, and they were bickering. Just not a good look. And I thought Sergey won, but they made it seem like he won by like a lot. He was doing better. He was landing more. He wasn't, he didn't like pitch a shutout, is what Bisping was saying. He didn't. He pretty much just outputted Waldo Cortez Acosta on the feet and landed more power, which wins you the fight. Nothing super fun. Sergey Pavlovich's confidence, I think, is completely shot after the Tom Aspinall fight. I don't see him getting many more finishes in the future. He used to be the finisher. He used to be the fucking finisher at heavyweight, finishing everybody, knocking out everybody. Now, this is 3 fights in a row where he hasn't. I think he is going to start decisioning people a lot more because he's not confident on the feet as much as he was. I don't think he's confident in his chin. I think he wants to play a technical game at this point, which might be better. It might end up being better for him, but I liked Sergey's knockout game a lot more than this. But yeah, Sergey gets it done. Pretty entertaining fight, kind of, not really. Next, Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling. Speaking of not very entertaining, this fight was pretty fucking boring. 5 rounds of not the boring that I expected. I expected this fight to be boring because of the grappling. I expected Aljamain Sterling to hold down Brian Ortega for a lot of this fight and just be way stronger than Brian Ortega. And Aljamain was stronger than him, but they only really had like 1 or 2 grappling exchanges in which Brian Ortega was the one shooting the takedown. Aljamain reversed it, laid on top, was way stronger as predicted, but the majority of this fight was on the feet, and Aljamain Sterling was the one kind of dominating on the feet for at least the first 4 rounds. He was playing a back foot striking game. As Brian Ortega would pressure forward, Aljamain Sterling would back up. He would circle around the cage. He did a lot of running away and circling and popping him with a jab. And he was outstriking Brian Ortega very cleanly. What I will say about this is that even though Aljamain Sterling won at least 4 of the 5 rounds by outstriking him in every department, Brian Ortega was not throwing at all. And it started to be really frustrating once we got to the 3rd round of Brian Ortega not doing shit. not throwing the right hand whatsoever, even though Aljamain leaves it so open. Every single time he comes in, Aljamain Sterling brings his chin way up in the air, and he throws his left hand, and his chin is so open to a right hand every single time he does that. It's the same shit Sean O'Malley caught him with. But with that being said, Sean O'Malley's the only one to have ever caught him with it, so it might not be that big of a hole. But it was just so clear, or at least something to try. Brian Ortega didn't try shit. He didn't want to strike with Aljamain Sterling. He didn't even try. And I was just left wondering what there was to worry about in the striking. Perhaps it was the grappling, like of being afraid of a takedown, which made Brian Ortega so hesitant. That could be. But I would not be afraid of Aljamain Sterling's power, at least on the feet whatsoever. And Brian Ortega has a pretty solid chin. I would have started the pressure that he started in the 5th round way earlier in the fight, and I think Brian Ortega maybe could have got Aljamain out of there. Maybe Aljamain would have went to the grappling a little bit earlier, would have made it boring that way, would have definitely dominated the grappling. So we never know. Maybe you never know. But Brian Ortega won the 5th round. He rocked Aljamain Sterling with a right hand and a left. It might have been a left hook. Whatever. He rocked Aljamain Sterling with a punch and had Aljamain running away like a motherfucker, running to the point where Herb Dean had to be like, "Hey, you can't run. Let's fight." Which, to be honest, Herb Dean was really anti-Sterling this fight. Every single grappling exchange that did happen, Herb Dean was like really on him about being active. I think either Herb has a problem with boring grappling as of right now after the Hamzat performance, or maybe the UFC is trying to get on him, but I don't know. We'll see what happens with grapplers going forward, but they were really on Aljamain Sterling's ass for being like inactive in the grappling and trying to hold him. They're being really strict. And I'm usually all for that. I'm usually all for like, let's keep this going. Let's tell the fighter to stop fucking holding him. But at a certain point, Aljamain he wasn't like doing it to a really big degree. He wasn't holding or stalling like crazy. And at least to me, it was like kind of crazy. Herb Dean was telling him to pick it up. But whatever. I'm fine with that attitude. I like that attitude. But yeah, Brian Ortega rocks Aljamain Sterling in the 5th. I think that wins him the round, but I don't know. Overall, Aljamain was able to just outstrike Brian Ortega for 4 out of the 5 pretty easily. Brian Ortega didn't do shit in those rounds. Aljamain Sterling was able to piece him up. A good jab, an occasional kick, basically a good jab, and he would throw like a right hook over the top every once in a while. Yeah, striker Aljamain Sterling is here. And it's better than the grappling version of him, to be honest, so I'm cool with this. I like this new attitude from Sterling. Let's keep this going. He didn't look very good. He didn't look evolved on the feet, is what I will say. But he didn't look bad. But yeah, Aljamain Sterling gets the win. Definitely not getting a title shot. Next. So up until this point, I went 100% on the card. And now we get to the main event. Johnny Walker versus Zhang Mingyang. I went with Zhang Mingyang. I thought he was going to chin Johnny Walker. I thought that was written in the stars. I would have put if I had to bet money on one fight on this card, I would have bet the whole fucking house on Zhang Mingyang by knockout. It did not go down that way, even though it almost did. The whole fight was I guess the whole fight was not standing. I forgot. Right when the fight starts, Johnny Walker fakes a glove touch to a Hamzat-like takedown and gets instantly reversed, and Zhang Mingyang ends up in full guard on top right away. And Zhang Mingyang starts landing a little bit of ground and pound, not very much. Just a really bad look off the bat for Johnny Walker. It's looking goofy. It's looking as goofy as I want it to be and what I expected it to be. But then Johnny Walker was able to get to the feet. Zhang Mingyang starts kind of putting it on him a little bit. Johnny Walker starts landing leg kicks, which start to add up a little bit. We'll get to that. Zhang Mingyang, every single time he hits Johnny Walker with a punch, Johnny Walker stumbles like he's about to die. Every single time Zhang Mingyang touched him on the feet, he looked a little bit rocked or a little bit like, oh fuck, that really hurt. Every single time. And I was so happy and so certain that Zhang Mingyang was going to knock him out. I was like, it's done. It's over. But Johnny was landing certain shit. He was going for crazy shit like a jumping front kick or a flying knee and landing weird shit. But then Johnny Walker hit Zhang Mingyang right in the calf with a really, really powerful leg kick. At least powerful enough to hurt Zhang Mingyang really badly. He starts to like feel it. You can see him like wince and like step on it weird, and he's like, "Oh shit!" And I'm like, "Oh my god, Johnny Walker's gonna get a fucking finish right now." And I was terrified. And then Johnny Walker lands another leg kick. Zhang Mingyang goes down. Johnny Walker jumps on top, landing crazy monkey ground and pound. Um, who is it? Mark Goddard gives Zhang Mingyang a ton of time to recover. He just can't. I will say, Johnny Walker landed every single time Zhang Mingyang was about to recover and like looked like he was about to recover. Johnny Walker landed a fucking retardedly powerful shot right to the back of Zhang Mingyang's head. Every time he was like about to get up, Johnny Walker slammed the back of his head, and Mark Goddard didn't say shit. I get it. It's a finishing sequence. It's not going to be perfect. It was one shot, but it was still like really bad looking. But Johnny Walker gets the finish by ground and pound after killing Zhang Mingyang's leg by a leg kick. Not at all what I expected. I would have won 100% on the main card. I'm very angry about this, to be honest. Johnny Walker is finish or be finished. And it's so interesting the way he fights and the way his career's been going. The fact that he has a win against a prospect that was pretty hyped up in 2025 is pretty dope, to be honest. Johnny Walker is not going to be a champ. He's not going to go very far, I don't think. But still, it was very impressive. Not what I expected whatsoever. I'm excited to see what he does next. As for Zhang, I don't know. You just got leg kick finished by Johnny Walker. That's not a good look at all. And especially because he was supposed to be the guy. Just not a good look. But Johnny Walker keeps his streak of either being finished hilariously or finishing his opponent pretty decently alive. So yeah, that's about it. Let me know what you think. I will see you soon.